As a retired cop, non-citizens as cops, is this Denver?
Yeah, I was just talking. I just brought this up last week.
I remember.
And then I get sent this article, and I mean, I got to get the bile out of my throat when I see this kind of thing. But so I believe the city council is going to vote on this July 15th, which could send it to the ballot. Any change to the Denver City Charter requires a vote to the citizenry, which normally you would think is a good thing, but we're talking about Denver right now.
No,
you know what I mean? But the proposed charter change would remove the citizenship requirement to serve at the Denver Police and Fire Department. Now, we're not talking about, just so we're clear, I want to make this clear, we're not talking about migrant workers or undocumented workers, but we are talking about permanent resident aliens, people on green card. It's so...
become a cop.
It's so crazy to me. So the potential change would apply to people with valid work authorization, people with legal permanent residency, people with deferred action or childhood arrivals status who arrived in the U.S. as children. It would not allow the migrant workers. All right. So now, I think it's important to look at the job of police officer just in general. All right. Arguably, we've lost sight of how important this job is for this country, because it's at some point there has to be the line, and the line's going to be a person, right? Because you have to task people with the authority to do this. So it's not a pleasant thing to do at some point where the buck stops here ultimately with the police, and you have this situation where somebody's got to be the face of it, but it's how we're able to go out and enjoy the evening and walk around our neighborhood with our kids and go out and not worry about getting robbed and raped and pillaged. I mean, arguably less and less so in certain cities now. But so you got to have the face of this, and we've moved into a place where like timeout kids are now running the world, right? I mean, I was getting beat, but so there's like violence never looks good. Never looks good when the police do it, right? But you have this timeout generation of people that now when they see violence, I mean, back when I was a kid, when cops came on and somebody got slammed, you're like, dang, guess you should have listened, you know what I mean? Yeah. And now it's like, well, why couldn't they have just hugged him?
Yeah, so talk him down.
I mean, when I started at the police department, the idea behind was if you're going to use physical violence and it escalates to that point, you want to do it firmly. You should always the thought was always like hit somebody one good time with a baton rather than 42 mediocre times. Right? But at some point, in a civilization such as we have, the buck has to stop here. So who do we want as the face of that? And you know what's crazy about this is you have to have responsible people. I think citizenry, I mean, the buck's already pretty low. It wasn't, you didn't need a college degree.
You need to be a cop.
It was a GED equivalent or high school diploma when I was there.
Not anymore?
I mean, some departments have
you have to have a 4-year degree now?
Some of them.
You don't even have to read good?
No, what do you mean a GED? Just so fucking be a cop. What are you, nuts?
So think about this. Like, the people that are permanent, they can't vote. They don't have to swear allegiance to the country. If they commit a crime, they could be deported. We've seen that a lot of times, right? Now, where criminals are going out and perpetrating a crime, and instead of going to jail, they're just ejected. And then you get a president like Biden,
come back in.
Anybody can come back, and they just come right back. So theoretically, we could have police officers that are committing crimes, because there can be a few bad apples here and there, right? And then are they going to have to pay? Are they going to have to answer? What if we just deport them, right?
Send them back.
So what's crazy to me is that this is how it's being framed, is that so and if you think this is a pipe dream, by the way, the Denver police chief's behind this, the Denver fire chief is behind this, the Denver Sheriff's Department has already accepted this rule.
Is it because are they undermanned?
And
are they understaffed?
Yeah, and the Denver and other cities have already done this. Okay. So but the argument is, well, we're having trouble attracting qualified applicants.
I wonder why.
Yeah, and do you know why that is? It's not because nobody wants to, there's no qualified applicants. When I took this test for the police department in 1998, might have been 97 when I started this, 2,000 people were waiting outside the convention center in Denver.
To be cops?
You stood outside at 6 in the morning in a tie and a suit, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were there so early because you didn't want to screw it up. You'd studied for this test 18 months. You toiled.
Yeah.
Polygraphs, background checks, drug
training,
psychological.
Right?
No, that was before the academy.
Oh, shit.
This was just to get hired. And now they're like, please come work for us, please, we need anybody. But the goal here shouldn't be to reduce the qualifications, Just anybody come on in, please. We need somebody to do this. The thing is, you got to change what the job has become.
Yeah.
And police don't have any support. And they will literally, as soon as you screw up, whether or not it's justified, some cops have screwed up, but otherwise they don't even want to argue. Just throw him to the wolves, take his money, take his family, charge him. You know, Donald Trump can tell you about being charged when John Q. Taxpayer wouldn't have been charged criminally.
Yep.
They've been doing that to the cops for years. So, I mean, I worked in internal affairs for 8 months, and I got thrown out of there, by the way, because I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
So you didn't quit.
I got thrown out. They were like, we're going to send you back to the street. And I was like, please do.
Because internal affairs. So you're
investigating other cops. But I can tell you first,
they hate you.
It doesn't even matter about that. The thing was, you know, I'll give you a great example. We had a guy who was a canine dog, whose dog got out and ran across the street. He was running after it. He'd left the gate open. It killed this lady's dog across the street.
Shit.
It was an elderly lady. It was terrible. And the guy was like, this is terrible. This is my fault.
Yeah.
He paid for the funeral expenses. He bought the lady a new dog. He trained the dog for her. He bought her flower. I mean, he did everything he could, right?
Yeah.
And they were just hell-bent. They charged him criminally with loose dog. And then when that was over, then the department has to wait. Then they went after him departmentally, suspended him, blah, blah, blah.
Jeez.
But there's already so much oversight for the police department. We had monitors' offices, you have internal affairs, you have civil liability, criminal liability, and a lot of that stuff is already transparent. But the problem is we're not standing up for the cops. We've got a generation of people that just really think that everything can be solved with a hug. And until we don't realize how dangerous of a situation this is, that we can't find qualified people to protect us at night.
What do you think has to shift, Steve? What do you think has to happen? Because the defund the police, that 4 years with Trump, that was one of their missions, was make cops bad. Everybody do. I remember during the riots, they were burning down places and assaulting everybody, and celebrities and politicians were bailing these fucking people out of jail. And it was cops are evil. Even black cops were getting treated like they were calling black cops neo-Nazi white supremacists. Yep. Like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Look, I think the thing here is the reframing. Back home, I put together one of the biggest organizations, civil organizations, to support police work. And what we got at there is that we need to really separate what is violence to what is force. Like, most people think about police violence. Police it's not violence that they distribute, to keep the law. They use force. And once you can't differentiate between force and violence, because the thing is that, violence, that's a coin that we've been using since caveman. Everything has been violence. Like, we have coins, bitcoins, checks, and everything, but everything boils down to violence. The person that can put the most violence out will be the king. He will be the tribe leader. Like, the most violent person will be that. So with civilized society, we've been delegating the use of violence, and we call it force now, and it's done by the state. If you don't pay your rent, they're gonna kick you out with force. That's what it is. So it's the final trading coin that we've been using for years. So my thought about this, it might be a good thing, because people that you need to staff the police. I mean, you need more police. You can't leave the streets alone, and people that have a high stake of being deported, as you said, they might do a better job, so it might be a good thing at the end.
Well, do you think, so first of all, can you imagine having somebody take away your freedom, the very thing that this country stands on, your freedom, your right? And have a non-citizen come in here who could get deported any minute, and they're the ones responsible for taking away your freedom or your right to privacy, Fourth Amendment right, coming into your house and searching your house. I mean, you have to have this. I think there should be a threshold that you have to meet before you're the one taking. I mean, it's sort of ironic, don't you think?
This already happened in Europe, and I'm saying on the abstract, this sounds like a good idea, but in practice, it's been the most horrible thing to happen to Europe the last few years. They've been hiring policemen that are not, they're foreign nationals.
And they don't care.
And no, they start enforcing other laws.
You don't know the laws.
No. They enforce other laws. For example, there's a big Muslim population that it got into law enforcement in the UK, and they start enforcing Sharia law on the streets. So this can only go wrong. as most things.
Well, I mean, I've been dedicated to this since I left the police department 9 years ago. I mean, I wrote the book From Boy to Blue. The entire point of that book was to explain the training, the mindset, what we see every day, why we are doing what we're doing. And the communication is getting better, but it's still not great, amongst police departments because the goal is different. The public makes up their minds. As soon as an incident happens, they start interviewing people. The police department says you need to let us investigate because it affects the integrity of the investigation to comment early, so they have to wait. In the meantime, they go interview anybody that'll talk, which is who? Like outspoken community activists, the neighbors. Well, what they did wasn't
Al
right.
Sharpton.
And then people make up their minds, and 9 months later, the police department releases a thing, and the media doesn't give a shit because they moved on 9 months
Story's
ago.
done.
So it's so important to me to when I came on, we were actually, when it was slow, we would go out and find stuff. I mean, one night it was slow. We went on the top of an apartment building. We were and it was a controlled government 8 or Section 8 government housing. And we see guys climb the fence and get over it. We go down, contact them. One dude has a loaded Uzi in his pants. We recover. It's a federal case. All this crack cocaine. They both went to jail for a long time. And what happened is later on, the more you did, the more complaints you had. The more car chases, the more resistance, because just sheer numbers, right? If the average police officer gets in a resistance 1 out of every 100 arrests, well, if you're out there making 20 arrests a night, you're going to get right. So, but the guy who wasn't doing anything was the star. Was the one that was didn't have any problems, didn't have any complaints, and so this started long ago, where it's it wasn't ever said, but the idea was don't do anything, just be quiet. Because if you chase somebody and they kill someone, it's over. But what we never get to find out is that the person, because by the time I left, by the way, if you started to chase somebody, unless you could shoot them, unless you were justified in shooting them, you could not chase them in a car.
God.
So it's let them go. They would rather let the guy go.
Then have you chase him.
And there's no way of knowing that this guy who, because we didn't capture him, what did he go out and do later, as a result of us not pursuing? You can't ever know that. But the idea is that the buck should stop with the police. And when the police try to pull you over, if you don't, they're going to chase you till the wheels fall off. If you run from them, they're going to chase you. It just should. There has to be this end, and we've gotten away from it because we're so spoiled here in a good way.
I
right?
agree.
That is such a dangerous mindset.
It's
horrible.
Do nothing or shoot them.
Yeah, there's no middle ground. It's just, all right.
And if you thought there was no accountability with cops, there's really no accountability with random people who can get away with murder.
shit.
You're choosing violence from random people all the time without any repercussions over sometimes use of force by police when things get hairy.
Steve, before we wrap, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
What can we do about this? That's the first one. And the second one is, what's the worst place to be a cop right now, and what's the best place to be a cop right now? But
all right.
what can we do about it?
What's the worst
It
place?
worries me.
Yeah, I actually want to hear this.
I mean, Denver, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco.
Horrible,
Horrible.
horrible.
Just awful.
I mean, is the
at one
patient?
point we were given needles to go hand out to heroin addicts when it was illegal. This was back at
What
a
do you
time
do to
when
that?
it was illegal to possess an injection device. So we're supposed to go. I mean, you're enable. It was so outrageous there that. So I don't like. I mean, Florida's a good place. Texas is a good place. There was a instance when I first moved here in Florida where a cop had somebody pulled over. The guy got out, was on top of the policeman, beating him. And somebody stopped, a citizen who had a gun, got out and just walked up and shot the guy and killed the guy beating up the cop. And I had just moved from Denver, and I was like, oh, God, this is going to be bad. That poor guy, you know what I mean? And in Florida, they were like, we gave this guy an award. They literally gave an award. And I was like, what just happened? My mind went... It really did. It blew
That's
up.
fucked up.
So that's the answer to that question. It was a totally different world here than it was where I was at. But I don't know what the answer is, Umberto. Obviously, my idea 9 years ago when I left the police department was to just talk about this openly and educate people. And I did a ton of podcasts. I wrote a book. I still speak about it. I have a bunch of stuff on the website. But we have to have this dialogue. And, God forbid you speak out pro-cop, then all of a sudden you're anti-George Floyd, right? Or you know what I mean? We have to be able to have these discussions. And we could do this sometime, where we could break down a case and I could talk about the mindset, the training, that kind of thing. And that makes a difference because we have such a small attention span now, right?
But
everything
you call
has
your
to
congressman. What do you do?
I don't know. this is not a thing that can be explained in 20, 30 seconds. That's why the media has trouble with this. They're trying to wrap up a story in a small package. And when in reality, you look at a district attorney's letter, which most places release, and they're public knowledge, by the way, when the police shoot somebody, and it's pages and pages of what this person saw and what the evidence showed and what the training is. And what you can't do it quickly. So we need a forum, and we got to make it interesting, potentially on the internet, on television, where we can explain what the job is, why they're doing this, and that kind of thing. Sort of like live PD, but not so entertaining, more of like a in-depth analysis about the job. Because once you explain to the average person what the training mindset and everything that's going on, they go, oh, okay, that was reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. Once they have
That's
the
why all these
information.
cops get acquitted, because a jury for weeks got told all of this, and then they go, yep, sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, of course.
But we're trying to decide after a 20-minute clip on you know,
on
social media.
YouTube.
Well, that's it. It's bullshit.
Yeah, he's guilty,
You know?
yeah.
But how come kids get sex ed and they don't get taught this?
That's
Yeah, I
exactly.
don't know.
That's a great freaking
You know?
question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
great.
It's
Well,
gonna hit the fan.
Well,
Sorry.
Steve, thank you. And
Yeah,
guess
thank
what?
you.
You know what I got out of that whole thing? Stay the fuck out of Denver. That's what I got.